Good evening, and welcome to this regular meeting of the Helotes City Council. It's July 26, 2018, and we're underway at 7 p.m. Starting our agenda tonight, we have our invocation. Tonight, Councilmember Blue will give the invocation, and then we'll follow that with the pledges to the American and Texas flag. So if you would please stand for the invocation and pledges.
Heavenly Father, we know that we are truly blessed to live in such a wonderful community as Helotes, and we are also grateful for the opportunity to participate in the process of making it even better. We ask for your protection for our police, firefighters, and all of our emergency responders. Be with our military men and women as they protect us and our freedoms and bring them all home safely. Thank you for the beautiful weather we've been having, and we do ask for some additional needed rain. These things we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, next up we have what we refer to as open session, or citizens to be heard. Are there any speakers? Okay. No one signed up to speak to us tonight, so we will move on to our consent agenda. For those of you who are not familiar with this type of a meeting, a consent agenda is just a grouping of multiple items that the staff and I consider to be routine city business. And our goal is to, if council agrees, to get one motion and 1 second to approve the consent agenda in its entirety. However, if a council member has a question that we can answer fairly briefly, they can ask it and we'll answer it. If it takes more of a discussion, they can request to have an item pulled, and it'll move down into the individual item section of the agenda for full discussion and action there. Tonight, our consent agenda is made up of items 3 through 8. So I would ask, are there any questions on 3 through 8 or any requests to pull any of the items? Hearing none, then we will proceed with this. I would like to point out that we do have a couple of our judge applicants here in the audience tonight. Would y'all just stand up and tell us which one you are? So that
Albert Samuel, good afternoon.
Okay.
My name is Fred Garcia.
Okay. Do y'all have any questions for them? Otherwise, they would prefer just to be quietly.
I think they're going to get plenty of questions.
Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Just wanted to let them see who they're voting for here. Okay. Well, if there are no questions or discussion requested, I will call the question and ask for a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 3 through 8.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that we approve the consent agenda items 3 through 8.
Okay, we have a motion from Meadows. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And a second from Blue. Again, no discussion being requested. We'll call the question. All in favor of approving the consent agenda items 3 through 8, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay, at this point, our municipal court clerk, Andrea Goff, is here, and she's going to give the oath of office to our 2 new judges. So if you 3 would just come up here in the front. And do you have a hand mic for?
Yes.
Yeah. Just come over here is fine, and then that way y'all are in the camera view.
Okay, gentlemen, if you want to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Albert Samuel Garcia,
Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of the state of Texas and will do to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States of this state. So help me God. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Okay, we'll move into our items for individual consideration. Item number 9, discussion of and action on the appointment of Bill Putty to the City of Helotes Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors, Place 1. And Bill called me this afternoon and reminded me that he has an annual function at Fort Sam that he was committed previously to attend. He wants you to know that he's very excited about serving on the Board of Directors of the EDC and looking forward to it, and just wanted me to pass his regrets for not being here. But I would entertain a motion and a second for the appointment of Bill Putty, discussion and appointment to the Helotes EDC.
Mayor, I make a motion, we discuss, take action on 9.
We have a motion from Buys. Do we have a second?
Second.
I think she beat you.
Fine.
We have a second from Massey, just by a hair. Okay, any discussion? Bert?
Oh, I just think I would like to just acknowledge what you said. I've known Bill for quite a long time. He's been active in the community. I think he'd be a fine addition to the EDC.
Cynthia?
I agree. He's done a lot for the city. He's volunteered many years for many different things, and he's just a fine person, and I'm really glad that he did this. He wants
Paul?
to do this.
Anything?
No, sir.
Alex?
I have no comments.
Jim?
No.
Okay. No further discussion being required. I'll call the question. All in favor of approving Bill Putty for the Helotes EDC Board of Directors, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next up, item 10, we have the discussion and action on appointment of Stephanie Stevie Seitz to the Helotes Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors, Place 7. And Stevie called me late this afternoon, and she had an appointment she was going to have to keep with a client. And so she again passed her regrets along, and she was looking forward also to serving the EDC. So if I could have a motion and a second to act on Stevie's appointment.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we discuss and take action on item number 10 as written.
I have a motion from Massey. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Meadows. Any discussion? Cynthia?
No, I think it's really great that Stevie wants to do this. She was one of the very first. She was the chairman of the Helotes Economic Development Committee that convinced the council at that time to bring the 4B sales tax before the voters, and so she was actually on the initial board, EDC, so I think it's fitting that she wants to, that she's going to come back and kind of see what's been happening since then, so I think it's a great thing.
Jim?
Just briefly, as I've gotten to know Stevie, I think that she's, first of all, one of the longest living residents in the pre-city and the city of Helotes. She's been active all along, and I think she'd be a great addition.
Alex?
No further comments. I agree with both.
Bert?
I didn't know her name was Stephanie.
Yeah, me neither.
Really?
I really didn't. I mean, we've called her Stevie all these years, but
Yeah.
I have one other question. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think this makes the board full
Yes.
at this time?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I had.
Paul, anything?
No, sir.
Okay, no further discussion required. Call the question. All in favor of approving Stevie Seitz for the EDC board, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. That brings us to number 11, discussion of and action on a resolution by the City Council amending Article 10, Board of Directors of the restated and amended Articles of Incorporation of the City of Helotes Economic Development Corporation dated June 25th, 2015 by modifying the residency requirements. So I would ask for a motion and a second to discuss and take action on item number 11.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we discuss and take action on item 11.
We have a motion from Fredericks. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion from Fredericks, a second from Buys. Paul, you're up.
I agree with EDC on increasing the available pool. I think some business owners from the city of Helotes would be a great addition to the EDC. So I'm in favor of it.
Bert?
I totally agree with Councilmember Fredericks. I'm the liaison for the EDC, and we've had a few times when we've had problems getting a quorum, and I think doing this will help alleviate that problem. So I'm all for this.
Alex?
Well, I almost want to defer to those who have that experience, but I'm a little concerned about some of the definitions and how they might be applied. And in that, I mean that obviously you still must reside within Bexar County. So the individual still has to reside within Bexar County, and I think that's a good thing. But how do we define as a business owner in the city limits or within the city of Helotes? What if it's an internet-only company? How would that do? Is it P.O. Box in Helotes make it a within the city of Helotes business? We have a number of internet-only companies, and they may or may not have a physical presence here, but this then, the way this is worded, allows them the opportunity to be on the EDC. Does it involve their offices or just some form of an operation that they might have? And I presume that a franchise owner would be considered a business owner, even so somebody who may own they could own a dozen chains in Bexar County and elsewhere, and only one of them is located here, so then they would therefore qualify. I don't have any particular individuals in mind that would be concerned about it, but the way this is worded, essentially you could have a majority, if not all of the members of the EDC that don't live in the city, because it's just blanket. At least 5 have to either live here or have a business. And so you could have a whole slew of people that don't. I understand the need to expand the eligibility. My approach would have been to expand it to the ETJ, to allow them to live within the city limits or the ETJ, rather than just say anybody who happens to have a business here, because we haven't even defined how that business is situated here. So I'd like to hear more from the other members of this. I know that EDC has said yes, but this to me opens it up so broadly that I'm sure that, I mean, I know you have to trust the future mayor and council to do the right thing, but then how do you say no to somebody that, I don't know. To me, it opens it up quite broadly without much in the way of regulation. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Jim?
A couple of things, just to parse a little bit with what you just said. I think as far as the internet or a business that only had an electronic presence, that is where we're headed on a lot of businesses. So I don't think I'd want to limit future councils by saying you couldn't be an electronic or a business that just had electronic presence in the city. I agree with the way it's written as far as being within Bexar County. I guess I could have lived within the ETJ if that were the restriction, but it's not written that way, and I'm happy with within Bexar County. Sat there with the commission for a while, and I know we did have a problem with quorum, and Bert faces that every month, but basically we did have that problem, and so we basically have to deal with that from time to time. I'm in favor of it in general. I do find that there's one major problem that administrator is misspelled, but other than that, up in the whereas section, but other than that, it's fine. Yeah.
Paul? Cynthia?
Well, I talked to Rick about this afternoon. He mentioned it, and I called just to ask some questions about it. And initially I was like, well, that sounds fine with me, but Councilmember Rue brings up a good point. Do we want an economic development corporation for the city of Helotes with no members who live in the city of Helotes? I mean, think about that. Do we really want that with no people who live here, who have a direct, yes, they might have a business, But, you know, if they're a business owner and live in Helotes, that's a plus, I would think. But if they're all business owners who do not live in Helotes, and they just go home to their, you know, they can make decisions based on the fact that they don't even live here. And I think living here has a lot of things to say for it. We kind of know why we live here. If these people don't live here, they don't understand some of the ramifications of the decisions they're going to make. And I don't think that the ramifications are going to, you know, they may not be very good, and they may not care because they don't live here to have to deal with it. So I understand the need for a pool of people to be on the EDC, and perhaps we need to, I never saw where this was, I mean, where is it posted that, you know, is it just on our website that we have these positions open? How is it posted that there's these positions open?
I don't know that it was posted on the EDC.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say. So we just pull out, you know, we just kind of ask someone that we know, you know, we don't put this out there. I didn't see it on Next Door Neighbor that there is positions open, and there's a lot of people who live in Helotes who are very concerned about Helotes who may have responded. I didn't see it on our Facebook page. Where has this stuff been posted?
We typically, ma'am, put it on the website, and then we do advertise through the city's Facebook page that we have these openings occasionally.
I think I'm a friend of the city, and I don't recall seeing it, but maybe it's
I mean,
not.
it doesn't, we're not doing it every week.
You
I
really
mean,
have to look for it.
Well, this is the point. I think that we need to do a little bit more to get the word out to our own citizens before we open this up to anyone who lives in Bexar County. As it's written, I'm really not excited about the way it's written. I think we need to have people who live in Helotes on the EDC, and I think the majority should live. I know right now, because of pulling people off and, you know, people leaving the EDC, we only actually have one person right now who is in the city. The other ones are, you know, live outside the city, and I guess they were grandfathered in from before we changed our rules and regulations. But I think the problem of not getting people is because we're not trying hard enough to get an outside pool of people other than people we just know. And I think we need to try a lot harder doing that. So I'm not ready to open this up to just anybody. Not until we try to get other people to even know that there's these positions available. So that's kind of where I'm standing.
I'd like to add just a couple of comments, and then we'll turn it back over, and you all can discuss this. I had heard a rumor that this was coming, and I didn't know in what form. After reading it, I'm very disappointed. I can tell you that personally, and I don't know of a soft way to put it, but I attribute the vacancies on the EDC as just being due to laziness. I continually ask over a period of time the president of the EDC to submit some names of some candidates that we could talk to. I agree with what Cynthia is saying. We have somewhere close to 3,000 registered voters in the city. I can tell you that I have no difficulty filling the vacancies. I just like to have input from the members of each committee, and I let this go for quite a while. And I will remind you that with no problem at all, I have filled the last 5 vacancies on the EDC, namely with Jim Meadows, Carl Hale, Wayne Stacy, and when I just decided to go ahead and find 2 more, I made 2 phone calls, one to Bill Putty and one to Stevie Seitz, and they both agreed to serve. So it's just a matter of we don't ask. When I ask, I have pretty good results. I was able to fill the vacancies on the Planning and Zoning Committee. But the thing that really bothered me here is what Alex and Cynthia both just said. It's just conceivable to me, and highly likely, because of some of the comments that have been made by at least one of the EDC members, that it would be good to have business owners on here. And the way I see it, as Alex mentioned, we could have a Helotes Economic Development Board of Directors with no citizens from the city of Helotes. And what does that say? I think it would be a huge mistake to make this change. And I don't think there's anything about grandfathering. We just let one slip on that's not a resident of Helotes, and we've got to figure out a way to bring that balance back to just have 2 non-residents. And the rest need to be residents. If they own a business, that's one thing. I think it's important that a business owner be prepared to recuse themselves, because there are so many things that the Economic Development Corporation does that directly affects businesses and the way they do business and their well-being in Helotes. And I see a lot of conflict of interest from business owners. So again, I think it's just, if we try, we have a huge pool of people, and a lot of those will step up with no hesitation. And I feel very sure about that. Plus, if you remember, it was a real chore to get this thing approved through the state, and we just now got that done. I'd hate to go through that whole thing again. There's no hurry. We have full membership now, and I would be very disappointed to see this happen and see this Economic Development Corporation just be deteriorated by not having citizens in it. And that's so conceivable. I did make a note here that we would strike out, I struck it out too well, the word just before City of Helotes, it's underlined, and put whose business or businesses are located within the corporate city limits of the City of Helotes. But I recommend you guys really think about this, and if nothing else, realize you do not have to take action tonight. In worst case, postpone it, give it some more thought rather than just saying, yeah, it's hard to find people. I guarantee you it's not hard to find people if we ask. Okay, that's my comments. Paul, back to you.
After consideration of all said, I think I would agree with some of the comments from the council members.
You'd agree with what?
What the fellow council members
Okay.
said.
Bert?
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, there's 7 members on the board, right?
Yep.
Okay, 2 of them have to be in the city limits, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you are gonna always have somebody that lives in the city limits on the board.
Not a
I
quorum.
mean, we're not talking about the whole.
Not a majority.
I've heard from you guys that the whole development corporation would have no citizens. That's not correct. You have to have 2.
Okay, 2. You wouldn't
Okay.
have a majority of
Okay,
citizens.
and then another thing I'd like to say is that you must be asking the right people, because the people I asked to be on P&Z and EDC, I get a flat-out no every time.
I do ask the right people.
You must, because I'm asking the wrong people. I still think this is the right way to go. I feel like we should allow this to be.
Okay, Jim?
Listening to everybody, I would concur there's no reason that we have to take action on this in a quick manner. I think a couple of the suggestions that were brought up was that, one, that they'd be a resident of City of Helotes or within the ETJ, I think would be something to take a look at. I think the second thing would be to restate it to where a majority would be members of either the city and or the ETJ, and that the others could be business members that had a presence in the city. I would ask to consider those 2 things, and perhaps the best thing to do would be to send this back now that we have a full board and have them reconsider it and take a look at it and look at those 2 modifications or others that they feel the need.
Alex?
Thank you. I would just point out, Councilmember Baez, that the way this worded basically says that 5 of them would either have to be a resident or a business owner.
Right.
The other 2 don't have to be either. So it is conceivable that you could have none on there.
Well, where does
I
this-
would think, well, it just says, it says that however, at least 5 must be residents of the City of Helotes or current owners within the city. The other 2 are not addressed at all. And so there is that possibility. While I don't know that it's likely, I just don't know that we need to enable the possibility. of that scenario. And as I mentioned earlier, if we need to expand the pool, at least going with, and I'm not suggesting we do that at this point. I like Councilmember Meadows' recommendation to possibly send it back to now a full EDC to have their point of view. But if we need a larger pool, at least make sure that they are within the ETJ, and that puts them, as Councilmember Massey said, at least within the area where they're being affected by that. If you have a business owner who wants to influence the area where they are, isn't that sort of the purpose of the Chamber of Commerce, not necessarily the EDC. The EDC to me is something that's for the city, for the citizens, not driven to benefit the businesses within it. Maybe it's to bring them here, to enable them and to benefit that, but they control an awful lot of tax money that will have an influence on the future and the citizenry of this area, and I think that's it. So those are my additional comments. Thank you.
Cynthia?
I would like to just leave it the way it has been. We have not had a difficulty, and I think a lot of the difficulty arises with the leadership of the EDC, as the mayor pointed out. And the other thing that perhaps you don't, and I agree, the thing about the business owners, and I'm going to go take that from what Alex said. Remember, I wrote the history book, and I wrote about the EDC in it, and one of the problems of having business owners, and several business owners were the starters of this EDC and were on the EDC board. And I'll give you an example of one, Jim McKinney, who is the owner of Flores Country Store. He said he had so much grief from being on the EDC, which is one of the reasons he resigned, because he was a business owner, and anytime he made any kind of decision for Old Town, they all said, oh, well, it's all to benefit Flores Country Store. And he said it was so difficult being on the EDC as a business owner that he resigned. And that's how come this, remember that when we've changed things, it's for a reason. The reason we haven't had the business owner thing pushing that is because of that reason. I guarantee any business owner who gets on the EDC is going to get a lot of grief, and because it's a self-interest kind of thing. They're on the EDC to help. Yes, they'll say, yes, I want to help all the businesses, but truly, they want to help their business too. And any time that's going to be even close to helping their business, they're going to get a lot of grief, and they're going to have to recuse themselves at some point. So you end up having a less amount of people that can even vote, talking about a quorum if no one's going to be able to vote because they're all business owners. We're opening up a can of worms by doing this. I encourage you to go back and read that section of my history book that talks about the EDC and the problems it had at the very beginning. So I think we should leave it the way it is, and I think the problem of not getting people on it is because of the current leadership, and that probably needs to be addressed within the EDC itself. Maybe what Councilmember Meadows mentioned is a good thing. Let's just let it go and let them look at it again. But I think that we really need to have a majority of the people on the EDC as actual residents.
At all?
That's it.
Yeah, and it's also notable to comment that just because you open it to business owners doesn't mean it's going to be any easier to find members through business owners as it is through citizens. And as I said, finding good qualified citizens is not that tough if you look at your pool and ask the right questions. Okay, any other? Paul, you have any follow-up to Cynthia?
I don't believe so.
Bert, anything? No. Alex? Jim? Then we have an option to amend the motion and postpone this and send it back to council as an option. Paul, would you consider doing that?
Sure. Let's, I'll amend my motion to deny this and send it back down to EDC for further discussion.
So it wouldn't be to deny, just to postpone?
Postpone.
And we'll send it back to the EDC. Bert?
I'll be outvoted, so I'll second it.
Okay. So we'll vote on the amendment to postpone this until it can be sent back to the EDC with some of the comments from council tonight, and ask them to take a little heavier look at it with the two members that they have incoming, and get input from them as well as the ones that talked about it last time. So we have a motion and a second to postpone and send this back to the EDC. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay, next up, we have item number 12, which is discussion and direction on the 2019 TMRS, Texas Municipal Retirement Plan Change Study. And this will come, Rick, you prepared to do something on this?
Sir, I didn't prepare anything. I prepared the agenda item request form, and I think
Okay.
that
Then
it's sufficient.
we don't need a motion or a second, since this is discussion and direction, so we'll start out. Jim, you want to start it? You have the sheets here, so the staff is ready for any questions, and we'll do the discussion and direction.
Well, as I understand it, what we're looking at, we have the option of staying right where it's at right now.
Yes.
And we have the option of doing an increase with the match. And that second half has three different iterations that it could happen, three ways that it could be increased. Let me go out on a limb here a little bit, but I think it would be good to at least consider getting reaction from our employees as to what we're looking at, and see what they are, versus you have, if you increase the match, you possibly decrease by a little bit their take-home pay. We don't need to be Big Brother, but we're also increasing their chances of a better retirement. So they need to look at it both ways and say which is more important to that individual. And I don't know the answer to where our employees stand on it as far as
If they stay in the system.
if they stay, yeah, if they stay, and that's a big if. It's not just within the system, but as I understood from the presentation, they could go elsewhere within the system and retain that. But other than that, it gets at the best frozen, and if they came back to it, that they would get it at age 60, was it, Rick?
Yes. That would be the earliest, yeah.
So my interest is in what do they really want as far as increasing, and are we creating a benefit, or are we doing something that they're not interested in? And that's my only comment.
Yeah, just to follow up, Rick and I talked about sending out a survey, and we weren't sure, first of all, what kind of response we'd get. Rick felt it'd probably be something in the range of 50-50, but I don't know that all of them would reply unless we made it mandatory. So it becomes a question of how far down that road do we want to go. Did you all get this sheet? You should have. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing that.
Mayor, may I make a comment?
Yeah.
I think what we would need from a staff level is what it does council feel comfortable with in the way of spending or dollars that are out of the city's budget. If you look at the current plan and option number 1, those obviously cost less to the city overall, both in the next fiscal year and also in subsequent fiscal years than options 2 and 3. I can tell you that since we're right in the middle of budget right now, that options 2 and 3 are a little untenable. I'm not going to say they're not doable. If that's what council wants, we can figure it out. But they are significantly more in cost than option 1. And so we really need direction before, if we were going to poll staff, as to what we poll staff on. You don't want to give them options when in reality they're not realistic. So.
And the increased load comes from the extra 2% match, right?
Mostly. The increased cost to the city for option number 1, which is the additional 1% that the employee would have to contribute, and essentially the 2% that the city would have to contribute, is relatively a nominal cost if you don't do anything else. We're talking about $18,000 increase year over year. the option 2 and option 3, which not only increases it to the 7%, but also either makes the updated service credits ad hoc or repeating, and the increase to the retiree benefits increases the cost to approximately $80,000 to $85,000 year over year. The issue that I have, more so than just that one-time cost, really is if you look at the funded ratio underneath. We go from a current liability of $635,000 up to over 1.2 to 1.6 million, and that's in just 1 year. So that's personally a little scary to me. And of course, our funded ratios go down from 90% down into the low 80s, high 70s, and so we're getting to the point where auditors are going to start having a concern with that unfunded liability as well, which means that the city would have to contribute even more dollars to lower that liability over time.
Isn't the difference, though, between 2 and 3, that 1 is an annual additional contribution and 2 is just a one-time? Did I get that backwards? Or?
1 is just the increase of 6 to 7%.
Right.
2 is the increase of 6 to 7%, a one-time updated service credit, and a 0% annuity increase. And then option 3 is maintaining the 6%, but doing essentially an annual updated service credit and but also a 0% annuity increase, excuse me. So the big thing is the updated service credits. That's what compounds the cost of our retirement benefits, because every year when somebody makes more money, it calculates their retirement benefits over their entire lifetime on that updated dollar amount.
Thank you.
Alex?
Okay. So I guess that this is more of a direction kind of conversation, right? So
A direction
I
if you
wasn't-
want us to poll staff.
Yeah.
You
Right.
can make the decision
No,
tonight.
I don't know that it's necessarily, this is gonna sound wrong almost at some level, but I don't know that sometimes the individual has a tendency to look at their individual paycheck before they look at their future. And sometimes if you ask them what they want, they'll vote with their initial paycheck and leave their future behind, and that's, to me, is a dangerous thing to ask them, because you might get an answer that's not in their best interest. And so I think that one of the best ways to obtain and retain great employees is to protect them. And sometimes you have to protect them even though they may take sometimes $15 a paycheck more, and I guess $15, but hopefully they may get a little bit of a merit increase this year anyway that'll compensate for that. But I think in the long run, we have to take a look at protecting our employees on that retirement basis. So I think we need to do something. I do understand the budget issue that we're dealing with. So as far as that's concerned, staying in the current rate I don't think is a good option. I think we need to do one of the three choices, because I know current was a choice. Part of me wants to lean towards option number 2, simply because, and I realize what that does to our unfunded liability, and I realize what that does, but that's probably what's in the best interest of the employees long term. We're also talking about, in the short run, you'll see that big impact, but the option 3 doesn't show you that over a long period of time, it's gonna get a lot worse, as they gave us the example on the screen, which you can't see here. So option 3 to me is really, it might look like 83%, but it's gonna take only a couple of years, and you're gonna be way down, and it's gonna be very expensive in years 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, et cetera. And then how do you make the decision to not do it sometime later on? So I think that to me, option 3 is out of the question. The question is, can we afford in the budget the difference between option 1 and 2? I would like us to see to go to option 2, because I think that's in the best interest of the employee retirement. We're also not talking necessarily about what happens if somebody leaves us and goes to another city, because if they leave us and go to another city, those, what are the words?
Credits.
The updated service credit only applies if the city they go to does that. Otherwise, they're still frozen at the point where they left us or where their current salary. So this really more is relevant to the person who stays with us up until the point where they choose to retire from that. And so my first preference, if we can deal with it in the budget, and I know that we have a lot of other things that are pending, and our new fire chief is probably going to be clamoring for a lot of equipment. But my first option would hope to be that we could go with option 2. But if that doesn't feel very tenable, then option 1 for sure. Thank you. Bert?
I feel the same way. Whenever my career, whenever I was in the San Antonio Fire Department, we were depositing 13% of our check in. But I'm a little bit confused. Are you saying that we really can't afford option 2? Is that what you're saying? Or we'll have to find a way to do it?
I have a question. When you refer to option 2, Councilman Blue, which one are you referring to? Are you referring to?
Proposal number 2.
Proposal number 2, which increases the deposit rate from 6 to 7% and does a one-time updated service credit.
Okay.
And it's clearly the one-time updated service credit that's what's costing the additional money.
And also, I'd like to, I'd still like to hear what I don't think the employees even know that we're even considering this. I would like to at least inform them, and maybe we can get some feedback from them. I know it's ultimately our decision, but just to hear what they have to say. So, I agree with Alex. Either proposal 1 or 2 would be the one that I would direct staff to consider.
Paul?
I guess my question was, if we go with proposal number 1 for this year, can we plan for the updated service credits next year or the next following year, and then on a more regular basis update the service credits so it's not such a big hit in 1 year? And the last time we did this, I think, was how many years ago?
5 years ago.
5 years ago. So maybe this gets looked at every 2 years or 3 years instead of 5, so it's not so big of a hit all at one time. So I guess is that something to consider, is to go with option 1 this year, and then we can start planning for next year, 2 years out, to do the updated service credits, and then do that on a more regular basis.
Councilman, staff will do whatever it is council wants to do. To the question about whether from Councilman Bai said, can we afford? I'm not saying that the city cannot afford option 2, option 3, or whatever option you put out there. I'm saying going from 1 year, fiscal year, and increasing the retirement benefit that the city has to pay by $100,000 in 1 year is significant. Mm-hmm. That's 3.5 people. So, and that's just 3.5 people at base salary. So, yeah, we can do it. I'm just telling you, it's going to be difficult for us to continue to balance the budget with a one-time hit of $100,000 a year. We'll do it. We're just going to have to cut some stuff.
Yeah, because on top of this, you have to remember that, yeah,
At some point?
just following up on Rick, on top of this, each year we have our merit and our cost of living increases too that go into their salaries. Sorry, Cynthia, I just wanted to interject that. I'm not forgetting you.
I would definitely not go for 2 at all. I just, as much as we want to do all of this for our staff, I think that, we have to look at the broad picture, and they work for a municipality. If they really want a good retirement, that you're talking about, go work at USAA or one of those big corporations that do that, I'm sorry, but I just remember too when I was a young wife and my husband he always wanted to do the maximum, and I always used to gripe at him. And now I thank him. He told me, you're gonna thank me someday. But he was my husband. He wasn't the government telling me that you have to do this, see? It's a different thing. I guess what my question is, can our employees decide themselves, can we have a mixing of some saying, yes, I want 7%, and some saying, yes, I want 6%?
No.
See, and that's what the problem is. In the government, where my husband worked, they had the option individually to do it. And I don't like this fact of because there's a lot of people, most of the people who are going to be mostly affected with this going from 6% to 7% is our lower income people. And they're going to see a big hit on their paychecks. Not the higher income people, the lower, and those are the ones that are mostly going to be affected. And there's going to be some griping, and those are the ones who are living almost sometimes paycheck to paycheck. And now we're taking more to tell them, oh, in the future you're going to get, how much more are they going to get when they retire? $200 more a month, maybe? $100 more? Who knows? Okay, but I don't think it's worth the grief that we're going to feel and that they're going to feel when their wives look at their checks and say, wait a minute, you got a pittance 1% raise, a merit raise, but they took that percent and put it in retirement. And you know, I mean, there's going to be a lot of grumbling in people's homes. Again, if this is a husband and wife thing and they're arguing about it and the husband says this is the way it's going to be and the wife can fight with him for a little bit and then everything's fine. But this is the government telling you this is what we're going to do whether you like it or not. And I don't like that. They've been okay with 6%. And I think we should just leave it the way it is. We don't have a gigantic budget to work with. We're not a major corporation. We're a small municipality. And we have to get this mindset that we want to do all this wonderful stuff with money we don't have. Okay, that's where I am.
Okay, just a couple of thoughts. I was intrigued when I heard that they can't take care of themselves, so the city has to take care of them. And a 6% or 7% savings is not necessarily going to make a good retirement, especially that 1%. Any retirement plan will show you need to be saving 10 to 15% over the long haul to really have any kind of good retirement. And you have to remember too that there are vehicles like IRAs and other things that they can do to accumulate money for retirement outside of the city's plan. So it's not like this is the end all, the solve all for the retirement problems. At some point, they're going to be able to make their own decision what they want to do. Jim, any follow-up?
Just add one other, Rick, I thought we had looked at, I guess it would muddy the waters here, but I thought we looked at the fourth alternative, which was to keep it at 6%, but to do the catch-up. I thought we looked at that as, or we asked to have that looked at if there was an impact one way or the other.
Yeah, that was one of the
To
things.
do the catch-up on,
No, to keep
Just
it,
service credits.
To
Just
keep the
use service
deposit rate
credits.
at 6%,
Yeah.
but to do the one-time catch-up, the updated service credit.
do
yeah,
the 6 and then
keep
do
it
the updated.
6 and then just do it updated.
And I'm not sure that, I don't know the answer to the question of does it have a material impact, but I've always felt like the catch-up is going to work better than the adding the 1%. And so
what I was
that's where I'm coming from on that.
Councilman, I believe that was in the original submittal
Yes.
to council.
Yes.
And so we have those numbers.
Okay.
He just didn't include them in this plan study.
We can send it out to you all.
Oh, all right, that was my only additional, I just didn't know what that impact was.
Is it this one?
This is the current plan right here.
Alex, anything additional?
No, I don't propose that we stress the city budget by doing this. And when I said it would be nice if we could do option 2, but, you know, I'm perfectly comfortable with the option 1. I think that I concur with Councilmember Meadows when the updated service credit is probably going to have a much stronger effect because it brings their salary up for whatever number of percent that they've been I don't know what the impact, I don't remember what the impact would have been on their
She-
dollars.
Selena's going to get
She's
the
gonna get it,
packet
yeah.
from last time, so that we have it.
But I,
And pardon me, what I was also saying, I would never buy into personally doing it a mandatory annual. I think we need to periodically have our own judgment saying it's time for an update, whether that's 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years. But to say we're going to legislate that it's going to be an annual, I couldn't support that. But I'm sorry, but I just,
no, I agree completely. I think that then it becomes an entitlement that you have trouble getting rid of.
Yep.
And that would really tie the hands of any future administration and on how they could do that. I understand the difference between 6 and 7 is not gonna make the difference in it. I also figure the person who can't handle the 6 and 7 now probably doesn't have an IRA either.
That's their prerogative.
This is true, but we also want to encourage good employees to stay too. So, did you have?
Councilman, yes, the 6% with a one-time 100% updated service credit is a total rate of 6.85%.
and what would be the budgetary impact of that?
It'd be less than option 1 included in our packet, so it'd be less than $18,000 or $19,000.
Really?
Yep.
I like that option.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So that's just updating the service credits one time
That is correct.
without changing the deposit rate?
That is correct.
I could go with that one. I think we need to do the updated service credits.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, so right now, that's the direction.
Yeah.
You know,
For me.
Bert?
Okay. I still think when Mr. Rodriguez was here, he told us that he would have an employee seminar or employee, question and answer session if we wanted it. I still think we should consider the 7%, at least the option number 1. I still am leaning to option 2, proposal number 2. It's not like we're trying to take care of our employees, but I'm like with Alex, we need to try to keep our employees because we are matching some of this increase, and that's what keeps good employees. And then Mr. Rodriguez also said that most cities are doing the 7%. We were one of the few that were just doing 6%. So what do we have? I mean, when does this have to be completely done?
The end of budget.
The end of budget?
Yeah,
So
we're still getting
talking
numbers together.
Well, it has to be
September.
done by the end of budget, but it'd be nice if we were able to present a balanced budget
Right.
with.
Like we usually do.
Yeah.
No, you always do.
So the direction you all give tonight will allow us, mainly Rick, to crunch those numbers and include that in the salary and benefits package. So if you're gonna come out of tonight leaning toward that 4th option of the updated service credit and keep the 6%, that's fine, and I guess we can figure the 7% with the one time, or is that's
already-
option 2?
that's option 1.
That's option 1, yeah.
Proposal number 1, yeah.
So those 2, I guess we could bring to them when, well, you really you need that to have the budget balanced, right?
You're talking about doing a 7% with a 100% one-time updated service credit and a 6% with the same 100% updated service credit.
Correct.
No, for budget purposes, I would just include the higher dollar amount, and then we can always go
Okay.
down.
So we'll do that, and then we can talk about it some more.
Okay.
We'll go worst case.
Do you have to go to 7%?
Anything else?
Or
I-
can you
I
go
really
to a-
don't wanna
can you
go to
a 6 or
7%.
6.5?
Well, I do.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
can we vote on it?
Yeah, we will, when the time, not tonight, this is just discussion and direction. The voting on it will come when we do the budget. If you want to do it separately, I suppose we can do it separately, but keep it out of the budget and maybe next month.
They only
I
have-
mean, next meeting.
They only have 5, 6,
I-
and 7%.
Okay.
7's
I
the ceiling.
just really think that this idea that we're gonna retain employees by adding a 7% is absolutely the opposite. I think we're gonna lose employees when they see their salaries go down. I know that because of the whatever, I just think it's not gonna work. And I like to see the current with the service credits. in there. Now, you say you want to do it the higher amount. How much more is that for that 1%?
It would be the 18,000 is the highest,
Right.
and then the one-time service credit with our current 6% would be something less than.
Something less
the
than that.
18.
No, the 7% with the 100% updated service credit is the 10.3%. That is the highest number. So if you look on your chart, it's the one labeled 12 in the top. The 7% with the 100% updated service credit, that's the only change. No, excuse me, it does include a retirement. No, it doesn't, annuity increase, that's fine. Is the 10.3%.
So it's going up 10.3%.
No. The current rate that we have is 6.94%. So it'd be going up almost 5 points.
So it's a
Sorry,
lot more
3
than,
points.
it's gonna be a lot more than this 18,000 that's on this thing here.
That dollar amount is $86,000.
That's 86,000. So you're going to number 2.
No, that's option 3.
That's option 2.
No, option 2 is the 86,000.
Yeah,
Right.
So
But-
it's going
but
from
option-
it's going from 18,000 to 85,000. That's a huge, huge leap.
especially when we're in the hole now quite a bit anyway.
I just think it's silly to do that. It's just wrong. I just, you know,
I thought you said that the option they were asking for would come in less than 18.
The new option,
That was
option
at
4.
6% with a one-time updated service credit.
Okay,
Going to 7 with the same is significantly more expensive.
okay. We'll bring this back on the 9th when we present the budget and really stress it a little more, because I think some people are still confused. I know I am.
yeah. There's a
I
lot
hate
of
to admit
numbers
it.
here, and there's a lot of different proposals, and none of them seem to
Because
match up with
it's
the
easy to
numbers.
toss this stuff around, but we want to really be sure. Paul, Cynthia, did you have anything else?
Yeah, no, well, you've already heard me. so.
Paul?
I would just lean more towards the service credit updates, in my
That's it.
opinion.
I mean, if I may, Mayor, the consensus, even though I know that Councilman Buys and maybe Councilman Blue would disagree with me on this, but the consensus is 6%, 100% updated service credit. I'm getting that from 3 council people.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
So then we will, if it's okay with you, can I budget for
Sure.
the 6% and the 100% updated service credit, and then that'll be more manageable, and then we can talk about it when we get to the budget.
That's fine. Anybody have a problem with that, as far as direction goes? For now, it's not
If
set.
there's all
in s-
kinds of money left over, we can pull it out.
It's not set, it's not set in stone.
Okay.
Anybody else have any? Otherwise, we'll go ahead in that direction. Well, you see your budget, your agenda, the closed session part of it. I don't know what I did with my.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah. Okay, that takes care of item number 12. We appreciate the discussion. Next up, item 13, we're going to go into closed session in accordance with Texas Government Code 551.074, personnel matters. And that is regarding the city administrator's performance and compensation. So we're going to adjourn into closed session at 7:58, and we'll be back. Okay, we're back from executive session at 8:34. And we were in executive or closed session in accordance with Texas Government Code 551.074, personnel matters, specifically regarding the city administrator's performance and compensation. We did not take any action, and there is no action required after the executive session. So if there are no objections, we're done with the agenda. Any objections to adjourning?
Nope.
None heard. We're adjourned at 8:35.